G&T show is intended for mature audiences. Parental discussion is advice. Live long and prosper, bitches.
Are friends with benefits?
Speaking of having a good time, Terry.
Mm-hmm.
Dayton broke the G&T show. This is now the David Mack
Appreciation Hour. You assholes.
What is it about this guy that people love him so much? With his purple velvet cape and his crown. I thought it was a little much when he had us carry him in the studio on a throne.
I am awesome! Look what I have done! Look what I have brought upon the world!
There is an urge to go nya 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 nya.
I heard rumors that you might be working on something else, but we won't pry much. I was going to say
I'm going to pry a little.
Dare you! How dare you ask me to change it? Do you not understand the majesty of my genius? And the guy sitting next to me looked at me like he was, like I'd cramped in his hat.
Yeah, it's the professionalism that sells the show. That's right.
And Jolan True, welcome to another edition of G&T Supplemental Logs. I am Gettysburg 7, sitting to my right, your left. There she is, resplendent today in her TOS uniform, Terry.
Hi, everyone.
Sitting across from my left to your right in his agony booth because he pissed the captain off, Ceridium.
Kapla! Get me out of this thing.
No. And our special guest this week, author extraordinaire, who I can't wait to talk to because he wrote about Romulans. Author Michael A. Mart.
Hello, hello.
Welcome to the show. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are so pleased that you could join us this week. I think it's great.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me.
We have a lot to talk about.
Yes, you've written some things that we devoted a whole show to one of your books almost.
Oh, really? Oh, which one?
Needs of Many.
Oh, right.
Well, there are quite a few.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun. That was a real change of pace.
Well, let's start there. Now, how did that come? Did you have what Christine Thompson calls the path to 2409 heading into that, and then you wrote the book around that? How did that happen?
Well, yeah, sort of. The whole thing kind of came about by mistake. I think somebody at Pocket must have misread a schedule, and by the time they realized that they were already way behind the 8 ball on the deadline, by the time my phone rang and I was asked if I wanted to do it, they probably should have already had a manuscript in hand like 3 weeks before. So, I mean, this was
wow.
This was your textbook crash deadline sort of situation. I don't know how that came about, and I don't think I was the first one called, but whoever was ahead of me had the good sense to say no. I said, yeah, sure, no problem. And they put me in touch with Christine Thompson, and she shared the timeline with me, and so I just took that as my track to run my trains on. So between that and the comic book prequel to J.J. Abrams' first Star Trek movie, the reintroduced Data, that gave me a hook to hang Return of Data story, which has since been obviated by other continuity. But of course, I dealt with the fact right in the story that, hey, you're going to find stuff here that doesn't jibe with the continuity you know or think you know, because the universe is a more complex place than you can imagine, and there was Q sort of winking at you, telling you that.
Yeah. For a little bit of clarification for some of our listeners, there are quite a few of our listeners who don't actually play STO. However, a lot of our listeners are big Star Trek Online players, and The Needs of the Many is the novel, right?
Required reading almost.
It's pretty much required reading, and especially for Foundry authors in the game. And a lot of us use.
You mean people like it?
Are you kidding? We use it almost as we would a Bible. I mean, I've been in conversations in the game where people are going, I don't know what happened what happened along the lines of, for what they're calling the canon of the game. And everybody pulls out their copy of The Needs of the Many, flips to the back, and then just kind of goes, okay, well, Jake said this.
Wow.
This is what happened.
So I never get feedback about it.
Oh, well, that's kind of a shame because, we use it all the time.
You've come to the right place.
Well, I don't haunt the boards.
Right.
It's really easy to sort of yield to the temptation to become a brain in a jar, with a USB cable dangling out the back. And I just...
5-watt lose on Mart.
Exactly, yeah. If I were as much of a presence online as maybe I ought to be, I wouldn't have any time to do writing. And then plus, I've got 2 kids and I'm constantly busy with that. And so I just sort of just send this stuff out into the ether, and I don't pay attention to reaction. I can only remember one reaction I got to The Needs of the Many, and it was an apology from somebody who I guess had typed something snarky about it on Facebook and was begging my forgiveness, and I never saw the comments, and so I thought, like, oh,
wow, somebody actually apologized for actually saying something mean about a book. Wow, that's pretty tight.
Did you do the laying of the hands and say all is forgiven? And...
Yeah, go forth and sin no more.
Now, one of the things I loved about that book was, I think, and one of the things Terry and I is very big on, like, we think James Swallow captures the Titan crew amazingly. I thought you captured, and we'll get into Titan because you wrote some amazing stuff for Titan. I thought you captured Janeway. Her voice just came through in that book to me. Are you a Voyager fan? Or?
Well, yeah, that's what I like to hear, because that's what I'm trying to, when I'm writing a book like that, where it's essentially a play, it's all dialogue. And it really was all dialogue.
It's all dialogue. I mean, really, it is. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
It's all written from Jake's perspective. I mean, it's almost like an interview.
I have to hear, that was exactly what it was. It was like a magazine piece. Mm-hmm. I have to hear them speaking in my head. And if I can't hear it, there's something false about it.
Well, one of the jobs that I have is I'm a historian for the United States Army, and so I do oral interviews as part of my. So I was really excited about this.
That's Jake Sisko's job. That's exactly what he was doing.
Right. So I was very excited about that format of doing the oral interview. And to me, it was me in Iraq, except Jake tramping about the universe. But what was it that enabled you to capture Janeway so, to me, perfectly? Now I know, Terry, you had other characters that you thought were you heard the voice. I don't think I could write Janeway that well, it's because I think she's batshit crazy, though.
Well, I don't know. I guess I never really thought about it. I just saw her first and foremost as a scientist, and maybe the only one of the starship captains we've been presented whose main interest was science. I mean, even Picard was never anybody's science officer. He had a very broad set of interests and a lot of intellectual curiosity, but he wasn't the scientist that Janeway was. And so I just wanted to kind of put that in the center, because you just see that the only other starship captain I can think of that was a scientist was Spock when he was captain.
Oh, that's true. That is true. Everybody else seemed to have, we all think of...
Well, Crusher was captain of that medical ship in the TNG, yeah. So,
but even she's not a general scientist.
That's correct.
She's an MD, yeah.
Yeah, the Pasteur was a medical ship, and she was always had a very, doctor perspective.
Right. No, and we're still talking about, going to go back here real quick. This is the beauty of being able to talk to an author while you have their book in your hand and say...
Well, what's fun about this for me is you're reminding me of stuff I haven't thought about in years. So,
now,
you're telling me this book was like, it was like I left it behind on Sigma Iosha 2 and everything.
There's a whole society that's come out of it. Trust me, it's kind of like that.
Communities. We had mentioned Foundry. Foundry is a tool set in Star Trek Online that allows fans to create their own missions. And as I believe Terry had said, Needs of the Many is one of the many reference materials that everyone goes to. So
cool. I wonder why they never saw fit to do another volume.
The game has been evolving, and they had some turmoil with an ownership change and cutbacks.
They're just not going forward. So
yeah, and like right now,
you mean Cryptic Games is under new ownership?
Yeah,
right, under Perfect World Entertainment, a Chinese company.
They went from Atari to Perfect World
last year, and then in over the past few months.
See what a small bubble I live in.
And over the past few months, they've been eking out some new material. And
can I say what's coming up?
Yes, you can. You can tell.
Oh, Ron.
Shut up, you Klingon bastard.
I hope Christine is still there.
Oh,
she is.
She is.
Good.
If you look on our website, we interviewed her a couple of weeks ago, and she's so much fun. In May 21st?
May 21st.
May 21st, the Star Trek Online universe is preparing to open a whole new chapter with their first expansion pack, which I think you'll enjoy the title, March Beneath the Raptor's Wing. The Romulans are back.
I've heard that somewhere.
And
right.
You'll be able to play. Yeah, you'll be able to play as either a Romulan or Reman right now, beginning in May. There'll be the third faction in the game. The Klingons faction will be completed and finished, and the Federation. So you have a choice of playing as either a Federation character, a Klingon character, or what will be called the Romulan Romulan Republic. It's a breakaway society of Romulans trying to reestablish free and clear from the Tal Shiar after the destruction of Romulus.
Oh, I see. Okay, so this is on on J.J. Abrams' timeline.
No, it's in the Prime universe. So in the Prime universe, Romulus and Remus were destroyed.
Right. That's what I mean.
Yeah, and
That's
it's 30 years. Right. It's
Abrams verse.
I think it's 2412 now. We're in 2412.
So, yeah.
I think we're in 2412 in the game now. So, and they just released, as a matter of fact, the new Enterprise and her crew. So the Enterprise F is in the game now, and we have a new captain.
Captain Sean.
Lots of letters in the alphabet, number one.
And she's beautiful. They had a contest for the design of the ship, and one of the players by the name of Adam Isle won the original design contest, and you can fly the class of ship in the game. And it's actually really, really cool. But the one thing that Michael was talking about is what's called Foundry, which is this amazing tool in the game that allows a player to make content for the game that can be played by anybody else in the game.
It's the game's version of fan fiction, and it's a wonderful tool.
It sounds like an electronic version of RPGs.
Exactly, yeah.
Very much so.
Dungeons and Dragons adventures and upload them. And
Exactly. As a matter of fact, Cryptic's other game, Neverwinter, is Dungeons and Dragons, and you'll be able to create your own dungeons in there. So it's just like that. And
but the Rihansu are back. I'm so excited.
Yes, we are very excited. But your book, The Needs of the Many, really is one of the tools that is used extremely frequently, especially by the Foundry authors in the game, in case they need to make a reference with their writing to make sure that they stick with the timeline of the game.
I had no idea that this is all news to me. Wow.
It's really
you can only imagine how excited we are to be sitting here talking with you.
Well, you see, but from my perspective, it's like they asked me to do this book. I do it in a flaming hurry. I don't think I've ever worked faster on anything. It goes out. It's a pebble in the stream. It disappears without a ripple. No one asks me to do another one. And I figure, well, no one noticed.
No.
Well, that's a shame. That's a shame, though, because now with all this new content, we would love to see, your take on
what has occurred since then, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I got to get caught up.
Yeah, you do.
Christine listens, so Christine.
Yes, she does listen. Christine, bring the man up to date. Yeah, we did get the opportunity to interview her, like we said, just a few weeks ago. This was before the announcement about the expansion was coming out, so she was able to keep a secret. And she's doing quite well. Very, very busy now that we know that she's been working on a completely new set of what sounds like 50 levels of content for the Romulan Republic. So do we want to keep talking about Needs of the Many, or we want to move forward, you guys?
Whatever you like.
Yeah, we can move forward because you also, as you mentioned earlier...
I'm enjoying the smoking.
Well,
we can always come back to that later if there's time.
Because you also mentioned you co-wrote several books, and Terry and I, and as Michael said, he's starting to read. Terry and I have been tight fans since day one, and you got to take part in writing Dinatra. Oh, excuse me while I fan myself off.
He's so in love with her.
Well, that was kind of like a big multi-author collaboration, because while Andy and I were gearing up for Taking Wing and The Red King kind of simultaneously, there was that 8 books? I forget how many books it was, that took place in between Insurrection and Star Trek Nemesis.
Oh, the Time 2 series.
A Time 2 series,
Time 2, yeah, that filled everything in. And so there's a lot of the bits and pieces that we owe to David Mack and Keith DeCandido and a couple of others. I've forgotten now who came up with what.
But let's face it.
Christopher Bennett came up with some of the aliens.
Right. Okay, that's what I was going to ask you. How many of those did you carry or work? Let's face it, the Titan is probably the coolest ship ever written about. I'm just saying it now. It really is.
She says that because... Do you have a beard?
Yeah. I mean, Star Trek, who doesn't? It's part of the uniform.
If you could see where she's sitting right now, she's surrounded by Riker dolls and pictures, and...
It's true.
Well, it's too bad this isn't a video thing. I mean, I actually got mistaken for Jonathan Frakes once by a little kid at the big 40th anniversary Star Trek thing at in the Science Fiction Museum in Seattle. I was standing actually at the front of Jonathan Frakes' table waiting for him to show up because I had the Taking Wing cover with me, and I like to get autographs across the likenesses of the people who are on the covers of my books. And there's this little kid standing behind me, and his dad was standing behind him, and I saw him turn to his dad and ask his dad, "Is that him?" I said, no, I'm the transporter duplicate. Spent the last 2 years out around with 4.
Oh, that's awesome. Totally messing with his head, too. Actually, it's because of Titan that I actually started to read.
Hello?
Trek. Oh, can you hear us?
Skype is dropping you in and out, yeah.
Okay. We did lose Nick, so we do apologize, but
it's not
he'll
your
be
fault,
back.
it's Skype. Skype is cursed. I've never seen it work 100%. I mean, I've never used it before, but every time I hear it used on a podcast, there's a gremlin, there's an evil spirit.
Well, it also, we're in the midst of taking up a collection to make sure that Nick gets a better internet connection than he currently has right now. But it's okay. That's why we edit these things. And Mike is a pro. Ooh.
I certainly do my best. Are you okay, Nick? You're not coming in very clear.
I'm still here.
Is Dayton around? We have this running joke where if something goes wrong with our podcast, it usually means we're either attempting to contact Dayton Ward or he's already in the room.
Or
well, some people have that dark cloud, but with regard to technology, you know.
Nick is trying to speak.
Wow. Boy, that's really bad.
Are you having inclement weather?
Can you chat in the...
Oh, he's gone.
Oh, okay. Oh, there he went. That's good. He'll reconnect. Well, while we
hearing
wait
little sound
for him... Yeah, it's okay. While we wait for him. No, I really do have to say is that's why I actually started to read Trek Lit, was back in 2007. I kind of had a reinvigoration of my fandom. And, oh, he's trying to get back in. I'm embarrassed.
It's making noises.
Yes, this is interesting. We haven't
Thank goodness this isn't a transporter, you know?
Yeah, really.
I've got a piece of him, Captain.
I don't think I could live with more than 4 Nicks. Well, either way, again, what I was saying was, I had a reinvigoration of my fandom back in 2007, and a lot of it was generated because of the Next Generation characters. And to be honest with you, it started with Troy and a discussion I had with a judge. Believe it or not, what I do for a living is I'm a claims adjuster, and my life revolves around trying to settle high damage claims. So I pretty much travel the country trying to settle claims, and they're really, really nasty, horrible, horrible cases. Usually something really horrible has happened if I have to go settle a case. And while we were waiting for opposing counsel to talk to his client, which could take several minutes, if not an hour or more, we would be in the judge's chamber. And we just happened to be 3 women. The counsel I was with, myself, and the judge happened to be a woman. And we just started to talk about Star Trek. It just started to kind of come up as a topic of conversation. All of us started to talk about the Next Generation. And then we all talked about how nice it would have been if the show had been able to continue on from the movies, and we would have been able to see, what happened to the Titan, what happened to Enterprise. And that's when the judge turned around and she says, oh, well, these books are starting to come out. And I was like, book? What are you talking about? And we talked about how, what a wonderful kind of universe that had been created or started by Gene Roddenberry and then created by all the other people that were involved with it, about how nice it would be if we could really just live like that, because it would make what we were doing on a daily basis a lot easier to deal with, if not have to deal with it altogether. Like, wouldn't it be nice if our jobs weren't necessary, kind of a thing?
Right.
And
a lot of the worst aspects of humanity that you could deal with.
Pretty much. And then, now, here's where you're going to laugh. The day ended up being not a complete waste, but it was horrifically, emotionally jarring for all of us. And I was flying home, and then, of course, my flight got delayed through Denver, and I wrote an email to the attorney, who's a friend of mine. I wrote the email to the attorney, and I said, God, wouldn't it be great? What would Riker do in a situation like this? And she goes, oh, well, what would Troy do? We started writing this little thing. Well, we sent it to the judge. She cracked up. She sends us 3 pages of prose, of written fan fiction back to us, and we picked it up and ran with it. So for the next 6 months, the 3 of us wrote this entire story about Riker, Troy, and whatever, and we kind of fixed things about Troy that we didn't like, because women do that. It was that day when I started to write fan fiction, and it was not too long after that I realized there are books out there. And then, of course, Titan became my favorite, because you and Andy and everybody got to create such an amazing continuation of what Star Trek really meant to me, and that was was that exploration. That was that idea of the challenges that humanity will face as they keep moving forward. And
well, that was Marco Palmieri's idea for it. This is what the whole series was all about, was now that the Dominion War is over and we're picking up the pieces, the Federation needed the positivity of going sort of back to its roots and showing that we don't have to spend all our energy just licking our wounds now until the next war. We're going to go out and do the positive stuff that the Federation was founded on, and that's Titan in essence.
Well, it certainly shows. Are you talking, Nick?
No.
Oh, but I hear.
Okay.
Yay.
You're back.
But
How much fun is Dr. Reed to write?
Oh, yeah, tell me about that. Dr. Reed's like everyone's favorite, so come on.
I like the fact that Riker put a lot of energy into showing how evolved we all are, and look how diverse this crew is, and isn't it wonderful? And then I wanted him presented with a crew member and a colleague that just gives him the willies. And he has to overcome that and, realize that he's,
maybe he'll eat his child.
Because you can flip it around and say the Titan is still a humans club, because look at who's in charge. The triumvirate that's running the ship.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They're all humans, or, 2 humans
Humanoid,
and a half.
right.
Very true. But
I would try to
very interesting.
Try to kind of deal with both sides of that, but I like to challenge Riker's self-image.
Well, you do challenge Riker. I mean, and I'm just going to go straight to Fallen Gods. The one thing that I have to ask you right here and now is, how long did it take for you to come up with what I am now calling the Kobayashi Maru Prime Directive Pickles?
That just kind of grew organically out of my understanding of the aftermath of the initial Typhon Pact, the initial announcement that Andor was withdrawing, was seceding. And it made me think of, it sort of flashed me back to World War II and the Japanese Americans. And I kind of wanted to show that, as evolved as human beings might think they are, they're still not immune to paranoia. They're still people. Yeah, maybe they're 4 centuries better than we are. And, maybe Steven Pinker is right in his book, The Better Angels of Our Nature, that we are getting progressively less violent, more evolved. But still, we have our reptile portion of our brain, and it will make us jump at shadows.
Interesting.
Now, one of the things I have to ask is, because you did Taking Wing and Red King. Now, My Next Wife was originally started in other novels, but you and Andy fleshed out and made Christine Vale the amazing woman that she is today. Talk to me about
He does call her, by the way, just so you know, he really does call her his next wife.
Why wouldn't I?
I don't know. She just kind of, she started as a spear carrier, and then she just sort of, broke the spear over her leg and decided to take charge.
Were you at all influenced by because a lot of times I'm struck, it's more of a tonal thing, but like the Shelby McCalhoun dynamic in New Frontiers, a lot of times there's that first officer captain dynamic between Vale and Riker that I think that's why it works so well, because neither was afraid to say, just like Riker wasn't afraid to say to Picard, no, you're fucking up. What are you doing? We really shouldn't do that. Except Christine is just so awesome about it.
Well, she's not afraid to speak up. And
neither's her daughter.
He created her daughter in the game, just so you know.
Oh, wow.
Victoria Vale. You can call her Vicky.
Vicky Vale?
Yes.
It's my favorite two worlds.
You're a big Batman fan, I take it.
Dark Knight. Christopher Nolan is, well, I'll ask you about that after. Terry and I have long talked about, instead of JJ, who should actually be directing Star Trek, and I would love to see Christopher Nolan direct Star Trek.
We're taking up a collection.
Yeah. Terry's in favor of Seth MacFarlane.
I like him too.
I was going to say John Waters. Yeah, but,
Oh! That would be hilarious.
Oh, my God. That would be...
I know. That's great. Well, again...
John Waters could do Q like nobody else. Literally. Sorry.
I guess another part of my question about the Titan book is, I think you've written 3, either solo or with Andy Mangels, right?
4, I think.
4? Are you? Yeah, it might be 4. I don't know. Of course it is. You would know more than I. And
well, no, I wouldn't necessarily. I just don't think about that.
Taking Wing.
I have to dump everything out of my head, make room for the next project usually. So.
Well, I can understand that. The one thing that the writers or the authors of the Star Trek Titan books do get to play with, of course, are those wonderful, looking at it as if it's an exploration episode, and those prime directive pickles or the prime directive problems that the Enterprise used to be able to face in the television shows, and some sometimes Voyager got to deal with in the Voyager episodes. And these are those...
That was one aspect of Voyager that I really liked, was the fact that they were so cut off from home. There was no phoning the home office to find out, well, what should I do, Admiral? That was a missed opportunity, I think, on Enterprise. I mean, when it was on TV. It's one of the things I was looking forward to when the show started. It was like, yes, they're before subspace radio, so the captain's really going to have to make decisions on his own. He's really going to be Horatio Hornblower. But they didn't go there. But Titan gives you an opportunity when they're way, way, way out, and it's going to be, several days round trip for a subspace signal because they don't have relays set up to where they are. Captain is back in that position of an 18th century sea captain, and that's what I wanted.
Right, and it definitely shows. How disappointed were you when they actually created the Vesta class that now allows a ship to pretty much zip out to where they need to be?
Well, it's inevitable. I mean, I'd be like Buzz Aldrin complaining about, all the hotels on the moon and all the noise. It was different when I was.
Which is even funnier because I've met the man and he wouldn't complain about that.
That's just progress.
That's exactly right. I mean,
you met Buzz Aldrin?
I have. I did. I got the opportunity to meet him, and he would be happy if there were hotels on Mars right now. He really would. So.
That's one of my biggest regrets about our space program is that we didn't return to the moon while Neil was still with us.
Yeah. Agreed.
And I wanted to shake Buzz Aldrin's hand in particular ever since he punched that guy, that moon hoax guy. There's some video of it on YouTube where this guy was like following him through a hotel lobby and heckling him and telling him that he's a fraud because we never landed on the moon. And Buzz turned around and just popped him, just flattened him.
That's awesome.
Yeah, He's
like
a man of years old, but he was going to have none of that. And I just thought, beautiful. I applauded. I cheered.
Oh no, he's still very virile. He's still very strong.
Well, and no patience for idiots like that.
None whatsoever. No,
he's fathering 5 children right now as we speak.
He probably could, but he's definitely a strong-minded individual. Yeah, he's a strong-minded individual, and he lets his opinions fly, and he'll be the first to tell you that. Well, it's exactly right. I'm old enough to where I don't care what you think about what I say anymore.
Those moon hoax guys are just really, they're kind of on my last nerve. It's been debunked 6 ways from Sunday, and Phil Plait wrote a whole book about it, and
another one
of an unsinkable rubber duck that we didn't land on the moon. Please, we landed on the moon.
I lived in Washington, D.C. on September 11th, and I love the people that say, a plane didn't hit the Pentagon. Really?
Yeah, exactly.
But speaking of moving things forward, you got the chance to help right the wrongs that were the abortion that These Are the Voyages was.
I'm particularly happy about that, yeah. I was not. I'll just say the finale to Enterprise didn't make me deliriously happy, and Andy was disappointed in it too, and Margaret Clark, our editor, was less than enthused by it, and so we kind of put our heads together and came up with a way where we could rehabilitate it.
Putting it nicely. Now, and it's just such a pain in the ass because we all know what the 4th season was and how the ship missed the iceberg in the 4th season and was cruising, and that they would have had Shran on the ship in the 5th season, and then the Romulan War, and the whole bit. So it's just such a disappointment. But you did get to write about that, and one of the things I want to ask, Kobayashi Maru, that was, to me, a fun book in a lot of ways, and so sad in a lot of other ways, because it led to Travis's disenfranchisement and several other things that happened. But one of the things that really struck me was little Easter eggs, like the Horizon visiting and leaving the book behind, and the character thinking about, I left that book there. Well, no big deal.
Yeah, that was fun. That was almost sort of a bookend for me, because Andy and I had, years before, we had done a comic book set on the other end of the Signyosha 2 story where we had the Enterprise E visit 100 years after Kirk was there, and there'd been a cultural quarantine on the planet ever since Kirk's visit, and Picard's landing party beams down, prepared for a Dixon Hill scenario, and instead it's like a Star Trek convention from 1976. Bright, imitative people,
Were they all talking like Kirk in broken syntax?
Well, they
I would love to see Dick Tayback talking like William Shatner.
Well, it's 100 years later, and there actually was a character present who had been there who had actually met Kirk, but I won't spoil it. I'll let you read the comic. Or should I spoil it?
Sure.
Go ahead, yeah.
At time, it's been 15 years or yeah.
Okay.
That's not a spoiler then.
Yeah, well, the guy running the regime on on Sigma Iosha 2 with this sort of made a cargo cult out of Starfleet. He was the kid that
I was just going to ask that.
Had promised a piece of the action. He never got his piece of the action. So he started this whole cargo cult, and they finally got to the point where they could actually board a Federation starship and take over.
Very interesting.
I only wanted was his piece of the action, and never bothered to give me my piece of the action.
Now, when you wrote Beneath the Raptor's Wing and the Romulan War books, did you go back, and I asked this in some kind of selfish way, and read Diane Duane's Rihansu series at all?
I never read those.
Yeah, I'm finishing it up right now. That's partially why I asked.
That's cool, though, that you didn't feel like...
Well, you can get sort of lost in the weeds of another author's ideas, and there were some broad strokes about it that I was familiar with, thanks to, ubiquitous wikis all over the internet.
Yep.
And there's only so many hours in the day. It's like, how much research are you going to do?
Well, that's what I do during work. I mean, on my breaks.
Yeah, well,
I'm a government worker. What do I care? I got a furlough coming up to catch up on my reading.
One of the books that we got to talk about with, was it David R. George? About, see if I have it right. Yes.
Oh, Tales from the Captain's Table?
Yeah, that was Tales from the Captain's Table.
Yeah.
All right. So I just had to ask, were you guys sitting around drinking going, okay, we get to tell this... this crazy Riker pirate story?
I forget how that came about. I think there was some alcohol involved. Well, the story conferences with me and Andy, we would meet usually in some place that served alcohol. Andy doesn't drink. He'd have like iced tea, and then I would just progress through several pints of whatever they had on hand. And I'd stagger home with a legal pad with scribbling all over it, and then try to figure it out in the morning.
Try to decipher it.
Yeah. That was kind of the starting point for a lot of this stuff. So I think, I suspect there was some alcohol involved in that one. I don't remember. Of course, if you can remember the story conference, you weren't really there.
Anybody who says they remember that conference is lying.
They're lying. Well, it's a very funny.
Don't get me wrong. I'm not Hunter Thompson or anything. It's
yeah, I laughed all the way through it. I just kind of had to say they must have had so much fun. Just because talk about being off the cuff and just completely different from anything that we've seen. If you guys get an opportunity, the story that they wrote is called Improvisations on the Opal Sea, A Tale of Dubious Credibility.
Yeah, there's just the barest hint that maybe it's all bullshit.
You think? Essentially, Riker's told to tell a story at the infamous captain's table and how or why the honeymoon on the Opal Sea didn't quite go as planned.
I just love the idea of Deanna Troi as like the pirate queen.
Yeah.
Right on.
I just think that's cool.
It was cracking me up.
I do have a question.
Real quick, Mike, for those that don't know, the comic book that Michael was talking about was Star Trek Unlimited by Marvel Comics. It was Star Trek Unlimited number 10, and the title is A Piece of Reaction, and it was July 1998.
Yeah, we were starting to acquire the reputation of administering the coup de grace to Marvel's Star Trek series, because we did the last 5 or 6 issues of Deep Space Nine, and then we did the very last issue. So it's like, is there another series we can murder, And
I love it. There's a disclaimer on the cover that says, warning, this is not a holodeck gone wild story.
Love it. Michael, what were you going to ask?
You had mentioned that you have a writing partner, Andy Mangels. Is that correct?
Andy Mangels.
What is your writing process for collaborating with him, and then how is it different for when you're writing solo?
Well, when we were writing together, what we would do is once we had our plot figured out, we both agreed on the plot, then one or the other of us would bust it into sections that would become the chapters. And we would know where the breakpoints were, so we had a list of chapters, and then we would number them, and then we'd just propose, like, okay, I'll take this list of numbers, you take that list of numbers. If we weren't happy with the list, we'd swap some back and forth, and then we'd just get busy writing our respective chapters, and then just send them to each other. And then we'd edit and revise each other's chapters so that everything was still kind of, staying on the same track, because it's possible to drift, and, there's just a certain amount of serendipity that happens even when you don't want it to. So you have to just kind of do a lot of serendipity management from chapter to chapter. And then we just put it all together and see if it all, if it all hung together, then we'd turn that in.
Very interesting.
I tell people,
I'm laughing at some...
I would do the consonants and he handled the vowels mostly.
Right on. And how is it different for writing solo? So obviously you're handling the majority of the work, but do you find it easier, more difficult?
I don't know. There's aspects of collaboration that are easier than going solo. Then there are also aspects of being a solo artist that are easier because, you're not going to get into any arguments with yourself.
If you do, you're in trouble.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I guess it's more or less a wash. It's just, you have more work because you're doing it all when you're on board solo.
But you also have more control over the story, or then again, I suppose the downside would be you have no one to bounce ideas off of if you get stuck or find yourself in a difficult position.
Well, that's what editors and spouses and bottles of red wine are for.
Very cool. Very cool.
I'm laughing because some of the titles of the comic book stories you guys did, Loaxana Troy and the Wedding of Doom, Four Funerals and a Wedding.
We were going for a B movie thing. That first.
Nobody knows the Tribbles I've seen. Oh, come on.
That was our very first, that was our very first sale, and that was another sort of Captain's Table-esque story wherein awesome. Everyone is telling Canterbury Tales only drunker.
Not a bad thing.
Everybody had just come back from Trials and Tribulations, and they're kind of regaling each other with speculative stories about how the Klingons and the Tribbles developed this mutual antipathy. And so everyone had their own version of the story. And in between each story, you see Quark carting the dead soldiers away, the empty bottles, and putting a new round of drinks down. So the stories get progressively more outrageous as the blood alcohol content increases. So that one, I'm told, and our editor just actually confirmed this in print in the UK Star Trek magazine, that story was the fastest approved story, getting through Paramount licensing. It was the same day, or it was within 30 minutes or something like that. It was just really, really fast.
It's from February of 98, and the cover is absolutely hilarious. It's Worf holding a phaser to a Tribble, and it's a spoof of the classic National Lampoon covers. It says, "Buy this book or the Tribble gets it."
Yeah, Tim Toohey, our editor, came up with that.
Poor Tribbles.
Very cool.
Poor Tribbles.
Oh,
I think it may be the first time, and maybe the only time, a Klingon has ever uttered the word "adorable."
Well, 2 weeks ago we interviewed David Gerald, so it's just so funny how Tribbles keep multiplying on our show.
Yeah, It's been great. Yeah. We actually got to tell them. Go ahead.
I'm going to raise a little havoc with you here about something. Seize the Fire. I love that book, Typhon Pack novel. But damn those Gorn names.
Oh, yeah.
Good Lord, man.
Yeah.
A little difficult to read for you, Nick.
S''SYRIXX. Z''SHEZEZHIRA.
Well, the thing I'm proudest about that book is the one thing I never thought I'd get away with, and I don't know how I got away with it, but maybe I was channeling Peter David, but it was the scene where our main sympathetic Gorn wakes up in Titan's sickbay after he's been spaced by his own people, and he sees Dr. Ree, of course, and he's reassured, I'm among my people, and then Riker and Troy walk in, and he says, "Mammals, why I have to be mammals." So, I'd been dying to do that, finally got to do that.
And now there's a sequence in that book where they're at the Gorn hatchery, and I don't know if it was what you intended but I got the overwhelming feeling of the movie Alien when they're on the ship where all the eggs are.
Oh, sure. I can see that because, maybe that's the creepiness of the reptile. I mean, there's a kind of a deep revulsion that we mammals have for reptiles, and I inverted that by, showing how mammalian creatures, freak out the Gorn. So, I wouldn't doubt that it would strike you that way. Yeah, I mean, not that the alien was reptilian, but it's the same sort of a revulsion feeling.
That deep-seated instinctual reaction to another species. I can see that. And it was
another phylum. It's supposed to make your neck hair stand up.
And believe me, as much as I love Christine Vale, if Terry had a chance to have Torvik sitting in her house, she would.
I would. Yeah.
I like it.
Choblik rock.
I do have one last question.
I think Torvik, a little bit of Sheldon Cooper from Big Bang Theory.
Oh my God, yes.
He is. Oh my God, that's right. He is.
Right on. Let's see. You also wrote for Atlas Editions, their Star Trek Universe subscription card series.
I didn't think anybody remembered those. Wow.
We dig stuff up.
Yeah, there were these big, they were almost like 8.5 by 11. Maybe that's what they were, 8.5 by 11 cards, like those, sort of like those recipe cards that you used to get through the snail mail, 1,000 years ago before there was an internet.
I used to get like science cards when I was growing up.
Right.
Oh yeah, I used to get like that too. Grolier used to have a series like that. And
Grolier, oh man.
Wrote some stuff for Grolier like that. It's over the years, yeah, I've done a lot of nonfiction educational kind of stuff. You know, sort of a bargain basement Asimov.
Well, Nick, you want to...
Well, I did have one. A lot of people have wondered, do you know if there will be any more Enterprise novels?
Well, I know there's one coming out that's not by me. Christopher Bennett is doing one that's set after To Brave the Storm. I don't know much about it other than I think it's something... I don't want to tell tales out of school and get it wrong, but I think it's going forward from the point where they signed the treaty in To Brave the Storm. And then, of course, I have that coda where they leap forward 25 years. I don't think it's past that, but somewhere, going forward into the era of the Federation, which, begins the year after they signed the treaty, settling the Romulan War.
How much fun was it to write the Romulan War? Because it's something that's been talked about in Trek for so long, but never really written about.
Well, I'd like the opportunity to sort of do journalism on, what was going on in various places. The big challenge was, it says Enterprise on the cover, so presumably the story, should be about your core characters, but it also says the Romulan War on the cover, and it's ridiculous to think that these characters are going to be able to encompass the war. They're always going to be in their own little corner of it because that's how things work, and it's just not reasonable. It's not believable that they would just happen to be in all the key battles. So that's why the journalist character was there, kind of taking us on this arc out from Earth, progressively closer to the front lines.
Terry, tell them about that fan fiction series that went up, the Federation or the news service. What was that whole...
Oh, that was Tales from the Romulan War. It was, no, it wasn't Tales. It was
Dispatches. Was it Dispatches
from the Romulan War? Yeah, Trek United group, a bunch of fans over at Trek United started to post on a regular or semi-regular basis. It took quite a while, and they wrote the Romulan War as it was different news dispatches from different areas. So, like the Andorian News Service, the Earth News Service, the Vulcan News Service, all of the affected entities, and even some of the colonies and things like that too. And it was actually probably one of my favorite fan pieces that people had ever done. So, yeah, they did good.
Well, the other big tentpole in the Romulan War was the political wranglings, because I had to get these 5 founding members of the Federation, of what would become the Federation, past their sort of League of Nations stages, even though they had some legitimate beefs. The non-human members had this really legitimate beef that, hey, you humans get 2 seats on the council, just because Earth,
the colony,
Alpha Centauri, even though they're more or less, independent of one another, they're still, it's this human advantage, and they had to do a lot of wrangling over that, and that was a real challenge to make that kind of come together. But it was a challenge for the civilian characters, for the civilian leadership, because it's not entirely a war story. It's also about the engineering the peace that's going to come afterward, assuming that they win. And of course they didn't dare assume that, because it was going rather badly for quite a while.
Right.
How much were real world events here with Iraq and Afghanistan influencing what you wrote, doing it like that at the time? Watching.
I imagine it probably did somewhat. I mean, you can't help it, because I'm a news junkie. I've always got a podcast, warbling in my ear, and I probably did that while I was immersed in the writing process too. So yeah, I mean, you can't escape it. It's the wallpaper.
Yeah, because it just struck me, because I actually read a couple of those books while I was serving over in Iraq, and it was funny to me that the juxtaposition of what was being presented in the news here and seeing how the Romulan War, and I'm doing air quotes but nobody can see it, was going. And I think maybe it was more of a subconscious thing, maybe for me being over there.
One thing I was conscious of is I had to, as the hand that guides the narrative, and with the outcome being predetermined by continuity, I had to have the characters that were kind of, against the war effort be kind of on the wrong side of the question, which is kind of a challenge for me, because I was not a fan of the Iraq invasion. I protested against it. So actually that was kind of cool, having to take the other side, out of necessity, because this was the potential extinction or enslavement of the human race.
Right.
And one final question about that. For those that haven't read the Romulan War series, I really liked it a lot, because like you said, I went into it thinking it was going to be the Enterprise but there's so much more to it than that. And, I think it's To Brave the Storm, where there's an ambush that gets ambushed, and it's just such an amazing scene what happens that causes the Romulans to retreat. I remember that and being like, oh, I didn't see that coming at all.
Oh, good.
Yeah, no, I didn't. didn't. I loved it.
Well, I like hearing that from somebody who's served. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, and, I got back into Star Trek while I was serving in Iraq in 2005 because of the Angel of Death himself, David Mack. Well, he is.
Yes.
I say it with love and affection.
And killed more people than Cecil B. DeMille.
Well, but Dayton Ward killed Terry and I in his books, so.
That's okay.
And I survived.
Oh, shut up.
Shut up.
Yeah, I bumped up a few friends.
Is that a cathartic thing for you, being able to kill some friends in a book?
Well, I ask their permission first.
Yeah, we weren't asked. We were just asked if it was okay if we were in the book. We were asked if it was okay if we were in the book, not if we died.
No,
but Terry got a cool ass death. She was killed on the Defiant that the Tholians ensnared, so she got to be in that murderous rage in that nether. Me, I'm killed off screen with like rock falling on my head or something. It was bored.
It was awesome, Michael.
It really was. Hey, I died at Captain Kirk's side, so I can't really complain.
That's true.
Well, we have our James Lipton questions.
Okay.
And our first question is the Dayton Ward question, which Terry handles.
Okay. And we do this tongue-in-cheek.
See, why do you do that? You should just
Because I don't want people to hate me.
You're pre-apologizing here. This makes me nervous. You're saying that you're calling it the Dayton Ward question. That means Dayton Ward conceived
no,
threatened us,
especially for me?
He threatened us if we ever asked him this question, so now we ask every author this question.
We ask every author this question just because it'll piss them off, and that is, where do you get your ideas?
Oh, well, there's a warehouse in... It's in Emory, California, just above the Golden Gate Bridge. Yeah, don't tell anybody I said too much.
It's like a captain's table. You have to.
So, ideas really aren't the problem. It's the execution, because you can just pluck them off the trees, ideas. But, you have, for instance, with the Romulan War, Beneath the Raptor's Wing, there were all these ideas woven together. The civilian journalist, the warfare itself as conducted by warriors on both sides, and the political machinations also on both sides. And there's the tightrope of, knowing that for some people they're going to say, you didn't give us enough on board the ship. And then the people who want the political stuff are going to, read the same story and say, you didn't give us enough of the Romulan War.
Right.
Balance. Ideas.
Okay.
Yeah. Ideas really are not.
Yeah, that's okay. It was more meant, like I said.
James Swallow threatened me when I asked him that question.
It was awesome, too.
I think he called me an asshole, too.
That's kind of it's a legitimate question because, maybe people aren't always aware that there's only a couple of dozen plots, if that. I'm not sure what Aristotle said. Maybe there was only 3 or 5 or whatever it is. So, it's all the presentation and what you do with it and how you take an idea that by definition has been aired before and turn it sideways and paint it green and file the serial numbers off of it and present it as something new.
I need to get a membership to that warehouse.
Don't sell yourself short. You have plenty of ideas. Unfortunately, they all involve Klingons.
Oh. Next question.
One of these days, Romulan friend.
All I heard was Romulan friend, and I'm not sure I want to hear more. Of the 5 televised series, what is your favorite Trek series?
It's a photo finish between TOS and DS9. I mean, for the modern day series, definitely DS9, because there was something about the reality level that nobody else matched. Even TOS didn't match. There is a fantastic element in Star Trek that has nothing to do with miraculous technology, warp drives, or transporters. I always had trouble getting my head around the economics of a society that's based on sufficiencies or plenitudes of things. When, all of human existence has been characterized by there's not enough of fill in the blank, and that's what incentivizes people to strive and work and progress and sometimes do less noble things. All of that stuff was much more visible DS9 because you were off the beaten path and people had to worry about money. Quark had to worry about whether his business was profitable or not, or whether the FCA would revoke his license. And
there it is, Terry.
Runt FCA.
Yeah. I love that guy.
He's so great.
We're a fan as well.
And it's interesting that you say that, too, because in Star Trek Online, online currency in the game was a subject of huge debate. Huge.
Well, we don't use money.
Exactly.
Well, exactly.
So now we use dilithium.
Dilithium. Well, it has to be something that's not replicatable, and it has to be something something that you need. I mean,
right. Yeah. And something that the Federation could use as trade with other species and factions. In other words,
that's a commodity.
Right. So while there isn't necessarily an internal currency within the Federation does have a currency that it can use with other species or other factions as well. So that's how it kind of got resolved in the game. The Federation uses energy credit, or Federation credits, kind of as they always have. But when it comes to the general currency in the game, when you're dealing with Ferengi, the Ferengi only want to deal with dilithium or latinum. It's great. So it ended up working out okay in the game, I think.
It's just something I always took care to avoid because it always involved a lot of, to my mind, very incredible hand-waving to just kind of gloss over the absence of something that's so fundamental to human nature. And every human society has required work in pursuit of whatever they were using for money.
Right.
It's the means of keeping score. And without that, you'd like to think human beings would be noble and, strive to better themselves, as Picard said in Star Trek First Contact. But, come on. I mean, we're all experts here. Maybe
I'm not even going to. Yeah, it's all right.
Well, I mean, who, given the chance, wouldn't just kind of, take a year off? Hey, no bills to pay. But everybody in the 24th century seems just, happy go-getters. And by our lights in our century, it seems it's hard to grasp what is motivating that. So I just avoid speaking of it in the stories.
Yeah.
If you could be any species in Star Trek other than human, what species would you be?
God, there's so many. A Q. That would solve a lot of problems.
Oh, that's our first Q.
That is our first Q.
Yeah, very cool. Good answer. Good answer.
Now, show your drawings to the psychologist, Michael.
Now, if you were given this opportunity to write an open-ended series based on one character in Star Trek, and now this could be the TV shows or the novelverse, who would it be?
The first character that popped into mind, I would probably give you a different answer if I had some time to ponder it and had some liquor handy. But I've always wanted to see what really became of Thomas Riker. I can't accept that he just died when they bombed Cardassia because he was, in a prison there somewhere.
That was the beginning of his story, of his escape.
Yeah.
I think, wasn't there a comic book about how he escaped? And
there must be, because he's in the game. His son is in the game, right, Terry?
His son's in the game.
Son of Thomas Riker.
Yeah. Joshua.
Yeah.
It is, what is it? Is it a comic book?
I seem to remember somebody did a comic book story about Riker surviving.
He escapes. There's a rumor that he escapes like Liaison 2, and then he's never really kind of heard from again after that. I don't know if it was a book.
I guess I'm imagining turning Thomas Riker, Jason Bourne.
In Judith and Garfield Reeves Stevens' novel Star Trek Deep Space Nine Millennium, Riker is freed from camp by a species called the Gringari and joins them in an attack on the Alpha Quadrant.
Right, but that's in a sort of a canceled-out parallel universe.
Right.
Malibu Comics Deep Space Nine had Riker's story Soul, S-O-L-E, Asylum Part 1 and Part 2. He had been taken to Cardassia Prime. They were trying to discover the secret of his duplication. His cells were only 9 years old, just suggesting their complete creation at the time of the accident.
Oh, it's too bad. Wouldn't it have been cool if it turned out that they're telling you that one of them's real and one of them is synthetic? Wouldn't it have been really cool if it turned out that they got switched, at the time of the transport, and that Thomas Riker was indeed the real one, if there is a real one?
Oh!
I have an ice cream headache now.
I do too.
Yeah, that was near the level of temporal mechanics.
Well, he definitely struck a chord with my heart, because if there's anything like I said, that I ended up writing a crap ton of fan fiction about, it was where Thomas Riker went. So yay! I approve. Do it.
I feel like I'm in a DTI novel now.
I can imagine Section 31 approaching him.
Yeah.
Now, this question does not have to be Star Trek. This is just in general. What other authors' books do you run out is in quotes, to get when released?
Ooh. Let's see.
We have so much fun with these because we make you all stop and think.
Yeah, I like David Brin a lot. I like Stephen Baxter. Stephen King still grabs me. Not every time, but I mean, as soon as 11/22/63 came out, I was all over that.
Yep.
There's a sequel to The Shining coming out, too.
Oh, you're kidding.
You're kidding.
No.
Wow.
Interesting.
He's such a machine, though.
Yeah, he's got to be a robot.
I don't doubt that.
Or possessed.
Well, have you seen him? Well, the early part of his career, it was very cocaine-fueled, the early part of his career.
I like Kim Stanley Robinson a lot, too. I guess the high point, my favorite of his remains the Mars trilogy. And
I'm writing that down. Could you say that again?
Kim Stanley Robinson.
Okay.
And I recently got all over some Ben Bova, because he did another, not too long ago in the past, he did yet another of his Mars novels.
Is there a genre you have not written written or published yet, but would love to try?
Oh, countless genres. I've never done a Western. I've never done a supernatural romance, but that could be kind of fun. I'm working on an original fantasy right now that I'm not going to talk about much more than that, but...
Well, I loved your Game of Thrones books. They were fantastic. Wonderful. Oh, never mind.
He does that from time to time.
I would love to do some fantasy and some horror. I think probably most of all. But
what kind of horror? Like your classic House on Haunted Hill type, or
creature feature?
Well, there's a project I've got kind of on the back burner. It's sort of The Walking Dead many years down the road, and a generation of kids that's been sort of kept sheltered from that, and sort of a YA horror thing, because they leave town and they're not supposed to, and find out the hard way what's happened.
Oh,
no! But Mom.
Yeah.
Now, if you were the captain of a starship, what would that ship's name be? The USS.
Ooh. I was just thinking about some projects I want to do, and the first thing popped into my mind is USS Avarice. But I'll be noble and say Hope.
That is such a Ferengi ship name, though.
The Avarice.
It would.
Yeah, it's going to be a Federation starship.
I think do I have a Ferengi ship in game?
I have a Decora I can send you, Terry.
Do you? Oh, man.
Yeah,
shoot, that would be funny.
That would be a good name
really
for that.
good name for that. I love it.
The USS Inebriety.
Now, do you have a favorite adjective? Do you overuse it? And is there an adjective you loathe?
Wow. These are hard questions. These are places where I really go. Favorite adjective.
And now we're kind of opening that up to verb as well. A lot of authors go, I overuse a verb.
Well, there's a noun. I've been told I overuse avatar.
Really?
And, atavistic. Yeah, so that's an adjective. Yeah. I've been told I overuse atavistic.
I don't think I've ever used atavistic, so you're canceling out my non-use.
That's probably because I used it twice, and Andy said, what the hell?
I love that word. I'm writing
Andy was always my pedant's conscience, you know. It's like, you really have to use that word with 9 syllables, really? And
like
my
your
take was, they'll come to a dead stop on that word, and my attitude was always, fuck them, they can look it up.
Look it up! How do you learn?
I never killed anybody. Come on. You know, I grew up reading Harlan Ellison. That's one of the reasons I have vocabulary like this.
Yeah, enough said. Here's the big one, which is kind of ironic considering your Enterprise novels and what you did in those. If you were given the green light to kill a major Star Trek canon character, who would you pick?
Oh, my God. In any series?
Any series, including the animated series. If you want to kill Arix, that's fine.
Oh, man. Because there's so many.
It doesn't have to be somebody because you hate them. It can be just somebody because you think...
No, this is why it's hard, because I automatically think of the core characters that are sort of engineered for you to love them.
Well, or you could be like Christine Thompson and try and hurt me.
He asked Christine, and
but I've got this basket of kittens, and you're asking me which one I have to throw.
Christine, without batting an eye, said Ezri Dak, which cracked me up. So,
because she knows that anyway, Nicole DeBoer is a lovely lady.
It's not her; it's the character.
And can I kill them off at any point in their history?
Oh, that'd be interesting.
That'd be a new role, but sure.
Interesting.
The DM will allow it. It would have been kind of fun to kill off Captain Kirk back in his prime and see what became of, see how Spock and McCoy and everyone else, or, did Starfleet stick in a new CO and...
Scotty became a drunk. Oh, wait.
Oh, wow.
Dude!
I'm probably going to regret these answers.
Oh, no, we've had...
No, that one, that's actually really cool.
Isn't he the first... He's the first Kirk, isn't he?
I think he's the first Kirk.
And it's not because... Captain Kirk is very important to me.
I think Mac responded with Picard.
Right, well, because he said he had the story all plotted out, didn't he?
Yeah.
Shocker.
But that's the reason I asked, can I, do it at any point in their careers? Because, if you killed off Picard now, it's kind of anticlimax because he's done all this great stuff, and it's much more powerful and tragic if you can't say, well, he had a good run.
Right. Or
it's much better. It's like, think of the potential. What songs Buddy Holly might have recorded,
Oh.
Yeah.
Now I'm thinking of Jimi Hendrix, and I have tears in my eyes.
Yeah.
You know what? We've always asked this question, and I've never really thought about it, but you know what? I think it would be interesting to write the death of Sulu. Because he's a heroic guy, he's a cool guy, and there's just...
what phase of his career?
Somewhere in his command of the Excelsior. He could, going down in the cap chair.
Yeah.
So to speak. Sorry.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to attempt that while George is still with us.
Oh, no. Oh, God, no. 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 Now, what was it I said to Christine? Go back and kill Nero before the destruction of Vulcan.
There was a whole.
That's the problem with time travel.
Why do you think J.J. Abrams hates pointed-eared aliens?
Out of left
Well,
field?
no, because he destroyed the Romulans. He destroyed Vulcan.
Well, that's true, yeah. I never thought of that.
Because I won't even go there. I'm being such a good girl right now.
Why? You're not on Sunday mornings. Why would you be on a Wednesday night?
I'm here to talk to Michael A. Martin. I'm not here to talk about JJ. We do that on Sunday mornings.
We have a guest.
We asked David Gerald about it.
Well,
Didn't David Gerald bring it up, though?
I was going to say, he brought that up.
Well, because I'd like to hear your opinion then, Michael.
Well, okay.
Consider the J.J. track Star Trek.
Well, I could pick all kinds of nits, but that's kind of silly because I think J.J. Abrams he succeeded in his most important mission, and that's to get more younger people interested in Star Trek again as a franchise, as a property, just make it more culturally relevant. And if your audience's average age is increasing by 1 year every year, you're in serious trouble. So I think this kind of reversed that. On the other hand, he fucking blew up Vulcan.
And Romulus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Vulcan, I mean, whoa.
And Romulus. Why do
Yeah, but I mean that's like blowing up New York State,
Well, Terry, tell him what we found out.
About what?
What CBS had to rein him in.
Oh, yeah. We had heard a little bit through a grapevine through one of our interviews that in the midst of everything, that at the very onset of the pre-production of the meetings with regard to the first script, that it wasn't just going to be Romulus that he was going to blow up, that he was going to take out Earth with it, that he was going to blow up.
Well, I wonder if he was flying one of those as a decoy, because, I mean, I've done that. Put in dozen objectionable things, knowing that 6 of them are going to get through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was my plan all along.
Yeah, and knowing him, that
may have just been tactical.
and he's pretty notorious for that, too, yeah.
And there's lots of disinformation, too.
Yeah, that is true.
The more that he can get us to talk.
Right. Well, that never hurts.
And I'm not going to lie, I'm excited about Into Darkness. I don't know if I'll like it, but I'm excited about it.
I'm a little concerned about, what making such a fundamental change as blowing up Vulcan does to this kind of bright, optimistic ethos that Star Trek was supposed to have. I mean, Gene Roddenberry would have been, I think he might have had some words about this. Because it's hard to imagine the Federation going forward with the same kind of optimistic outlook. As a matter of fact, I imagine that they're all over Spock Prime, interrogating M6 Ways from Sunday to find out, okay, you're from the future or a future, you know where a lot of the landmines are. I mean, somewhere out there's the Doomsday Machine. Somewhere out there, the Botany Bay is tumbling through space, unless they resolve that with Into Darkness. I don't know, I keep hearing all this conflicting stuff.
And there wasn't a temporal prime directive either to keep him from revealing information, I don't believe. That came later.
Well, you think he would want to just say...
Well, he even said that in Star Trek 09, that he didn't want to...
Yeah, but that's from his perspective. But from the point in time where the timeline reset...
He's stuck in that as the present. I think he would decide it's ethically, logically required that he treat it as now, and I have certain knowledge about things to come, and it's my duty to get the Federation ready.
Or using that to make sure that the Vulcans are in a better position at that very least.
I would say blowing up Vulcan meant all bets are off. Any kind of compunction Spock might have had about revealing the future, I think,
I think so too.
ought to go away at that point.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, by that point in time, things are so screwed up. There is no guarantees that some of the things that he would have knowledge of are really going to occur. They
of course,
just might.
But there are certain things that are hardwired in because they're bigger than things going on in local Federation space. We know V'ger's out there and on its way. We know the
probe trying to save the whales is going to do it.
Right. Yeah, these things are going to happen, whether this is built in. There's that
probe pissed.
The Doomsday Machine, and think of all the planets that are...
Yeah.
Yeah. Picard may be the one to deal with Khan. Oh, man.
Well, yeah, now we don't even know if it just potentially wipes out the next generation.
Yeah, well, I think that was the intention all along.
No Vulcan for Picard to attend a wedding on. Like Picard's on Vulcan at some point in the past, attending Sarek's wedding.
That's right.
No, it's one of Spock's wedding. Spock's wedding, yeah. I was at his son's wedding in Vulcan. Say, well,
and of course, there's always the big bad Borg still lurking out there.
Sure, right. So there's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting that the possibilities that this new universe can bring about. And
now, you've got to find a clever way to short circuit the fact that they have somebody there who knows about these things and can help them develop countermeasures. There has to be some consequence.
Or they could do something really amazing, come up with something completely original, give us an original script, and Spock can come in and go, I don't know.
Here she goes.
That's new to me.
Here she goes. Now, Terry, Mike, and I have discussed on our show how best to bring Trek back to the TV. I'm in favor of something like a Clone Wars type animated series, because then you could do Titan, and I know Terry feels that way too. How would you feel if they brought Titan to that kind of medium?
I could easily see that. I could also see something set on Earth with young characters at Starfleet Academy.
Yeah.
I don't see why you wouldn't do both, and then you'd have potential for some of those characters, if the shows run long enough, to cycle into some of the Starship like Titan.
He's smart, people. Listen to him.
He writes books. He is smart.
He writes. He is smart. He can keep Star Trek going.
Well,
he makes it
Welcome to Packlid Podcast.
My wife and I love the Paglids ever since we saw them. We used to just kind of improvise their dialogue. We are dopes.
There is, in the game you can play as a Packlid in Star Trek Online, and it was Leonard Nimoy's birthday last year, and they had a celebration on Vulcan for it. And there's this guy who had a Packlid character, and the biography he wrote had us crying because it was the per Packlid biography. I went to school. I learned many things. Stuff like that. Oh, maybe you had to see it, but damn, I wish I had taken a screenshot of it.
It was a riot. Well, I think it's time to kind of
I should have answered that question about which species. Either. I mean, they got to be much happier than the rest of us.
That's very true.
Or Tellarite.
Ignorance is bliss.
Wouldn't you love to see a Packlid haggling with a Ferengi over price?
Who you'd think would
win?
The Packlid.
I think
The Packlid, they adopt that persona so that they're underestimated.
Yes, exactly.
I'm currently working on a Foundry mission that features a Packlid ambassador, or admiral, giving orders. Funny stuff. Wonderful characters. Good species.
Do you have
come across Darmok? Sorry, I'm just flying here now.
I was going to ask, do you have any future plans, or are there any future Trek books in the works that you might be able to talk about?
Glad you asked. I've got a TOS ebook in the works. It's supposed to be coming out, I think it's in June or July, and it's centered around, it's actually like a novella. It's kind of like a big novella, and it's centered mostly around Dr. McCoy, and the bulk of it actually takes place kind of interstitially during early in The Wrath of Khan, so sort of between scenes. But there's an entire story that I've teased out of a very brief sequence near the beginning of the film. I probably shouldn't say any more.
Now, as an author, what is your view on the ebook phenomenon? We had a talk with David R. George III about this last week.
Well, I have mixed feelings about it. I think it has great potential for authors to kind of, build their own pirate ship and, just
independent publishing and whatnot.
If you cultivate an audience and you have a backlist, you can potentially, regain control of that and take it out on the road yourself, and then end up, splitting the money, all the profits with yourself.
Yeah.
So I can easily see a day when that's kind of the standard model of doing business. Authors just hire all the other functions that a publisher now provides. They hire them out on a freelance basis. You hire an illustrator to do a cover, you hire a graphic designer, and you hire a freelance editor for that project, and then you take it to market yourself. And it's because it's not like you have trucks filled with dead tree parts. It's electrons going over wires, so fiber optic cables or whatever. So that's really cool. But, I say mixed feelings because I don't like seeing brick and mortar stores turning into, post-apocalyptic dungeons and disappearing. And so, as I say, mixed feelings.
I can see the brick and mortar bookstores evolving into, say, like, what are they called?
Like salons and
like book printers.
Yeah, print on demand. That could be a bit.
Print on demand. Yeah, I can see the industry evolving in that way, where you walk up to a kiosk, pick your book, purchase it right there on the spot, and
go and have a cup of coffee, and then you come back and it's finished.
And it's hot off the press.
It's warm. It's just
literally warm, right?
Now, do you happen to know, because I don't have a clear indication of what's going on between Simon and Schuster and Barnes and Noble?
I don't know.
Okay.
Probably should, but.
Yeah, so should we. That's okay.
Yeah.
But because apparently we don't either.
It's
one of the
way above my pay grade.
I may need to start looking at editor and publisher or something to see if I can find something. Because
I'm sure if there's something big, there's probably something about it in Publishers Weekly or something like that.
What is, getting back to the ebook novella that you're doing? What's the name of it going to be, or do you know yet?
It's called Seasons of Light and Darkness.
Awesome.
Which is a line cribbed from Charles Dickens' From a Tale of Two Cities, because Wrath of Khan bookended itself with the first line and the last line from that novel. So I just took a little bit more out of it.
I love it.
Now, my final question for you is, of the Star Trek motion pictures, what would be your favorite?
Of all the movies, it's got to be Wrath of Khan. It's just so literary. It was just such a perfectly executed piece of architecture. I mean, it was just, the story was shaped so beautifully, and there's so many moments in it.
How can you go wrong? I mean, really.
Yeah, I mean, I heard that Nicolas Cage. Nicholas
wow.
Cage. Wow, that's a Freudian slip.
Now I gotta watch Con Air.
Yeah. Con Air, K-H-A-N-R, yeah.
Wrath of Con Air.
Boundary Mission.
I heard Nick Meyer had written it in like a week or 2 weeks. I mean, he just had to is banging out, but I mean, it's like, I guess art. It's like he says, art thrives on restriction, because.
Well, he talks about that in his autobiography that he had. Yeah, wasn't that a great book?
Yeah.
Oh, I love that book. That's one of my bucket lists. If we can get on the show, is Nicholas Meyer. His perspective is so much larger than Star Trek, and I think the franchise. You could probably credit one guy with saving Star Trek from obscurity and eventual death. It was him, because he really. That's what I've said too. Yeah.
He really put it back on the rails,
and had the coolest uniforms next to the DS9 Dominion one.
Well, yeah, I mean, it had this sort of naval look. It was this nautical, but he put. I mean, just from a pure business standpoint. I mean, just putting aside how wonderfully executed the story was, and how it showed the characters as having moved along in their lives and getting older and dealing with that. The Star Trek franchise was in pretty rough shape from a business perspective after Star Trek the Motion Picture. That second film had to do well, both commercially and critically, for the studio to want to keep going back there, and it was just the perfect tonic for Star Trek, and just saved it.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
Thank you very much for joining us. I appreciate you taking the time to sit down with us and talking and
sharing.
Anytime you'd like back, yes, and anytime you'd like to come back, you're more than welcome to.
Great, I'd be happy to.
Well, everybody.
All right.
Nick, do you want to tie things up for us, my dear?
And this is another episode of Star Trek. Jeez. Of G&T Supplemental Logs. We'd like to thank Michael A. Martin for joining us. Thank you so much, sir. It's a real pleasure. I've enjoyed so much of your work, and being a Romulan, I really enjoyed the fact that you took the Romulans on, and be looking for your new book. You said in June?
June, I think. Yeah, I think it's June. I'm busy doing revisions right now.
Sweet.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
And thank you for joining us, and we'll see you in the next Supplemental Log, Michael.
Great. Thank you. Good evening.
Joe Lontrue.
Music for the G&T show is provided by Warp 11, Grethor, 5-Year Mission, and Andrew Allen's Smooth Federation.
G&T Show is a Busy Little Beaver production.